The last thing my parents ever said to me before hanging up the phone was, "Don't come home. Your sister doesn't want you here." I was 19 years old, standing alone in the rain outside my college dorm, holding a phone that suddenly felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. My name is Grace Anderson, and growing up in a quiet suburb outside Seattle, my sister Emily was always the center of my parents' world. She was 2 years older, louder, more confident, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately become the focus of attention. I was the opposite, quiet, careful, the kind of kid who preferred reading by the window during rainy afternoons rather than competing for attention. At first, it didn't bother me much. Kids accept the world the way it's given to them. But as we grew older, the difference became impossible to ignore. When Emily forgot her homework, my parents laughed it off. When I made a mistake, it became a lecture about responsibility. When Emily argued, they called it passion. When I spoke up, they called it disrespect. Still, I tried to be the good daughter. I helped around the house, stayed out of trouble, worked hard in school. But everything changed during my senior year of high school. Emily had started dating a guy named Tyler, someone my parents absolutely adored. He came over for dinner, watched football with my dad, laughed loudly with my mom in the kitchen. But there was something about him that always made me uncomfortable. The way he stared too long. The way his jokes crossed lines that nobody else seemed to notice. One night during a family barbecue, he cornered me in the hallway while everyone else was outside. His voice was low and smug as he whispered something I won't repeat. I pushed past him and walked straight outside, my heart racing. That night I told my sister everything, expecting her to be angry at him. But instead, she looked at me like I had just betrayed her. "You're lying," she snapped. "You're just jealous." Within days, the story had twisted into something unrecognizable. Suddenly, I was the one accused of trying to ruin Emily's relationship. My parents believed her without hesitation. I still remember the night everything exploded in the living room. Emily was crying dramatically, while Tyler stood beside her, shaking his head like he was the victim. My dad looked at me with cold disappointment. "Why would you make something like this up?" he asked. I tried to explain, my voice trembling, but nobody listened. Finally, my mom said the words that still echo in my memory years later. "Maybe it would be better if you stayed away for a while." I moved into my dorm earlier than planned, telling myself the distance would give everyone time to calm down. Weeks passed, then months. Phone calls became rare. Visits stopped completely, and eventually, that rainy night came when I tried calling home again, hoping things had changed. Instead, my mom answered with a tired sigh and said the sentence that broke something inside me. "Grace, don't come home. Your sister doesn't want you there." After that, I stopped trying. I finished college, found a job, built a quiet life in another city. Years passed, and the pain slowly turned into something dull and distant, like an old scar. Then one evening, 7 years later, as I was standing in a sunlit park while the man I loved knelt down and asked me to marry him, I realized something important. The life I had built didn't include the people who once told me I didn't belong. But the real surprise came months later, on the morning of my wedding, when I looked up during the ceremony rehearsal and saw two familiar faces standing quietly at the back of the room. My parents had come, and I had absolutely no idea why. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. My parents stood near the doorway of the small chapel, looking older than I remembered, their expressions hesitant, almost nervous. My heart started pounding so loudly, I could barely hear the music rehearsal happening behind me. The last time I had spoken to them was years ago, when they told me not to come home. Now they were standing here, uninvited, on the most important weekend of my life. I walked slowly toward them, my fiancé Daniel noticing the tension immediately and gently squeezing my hand before letting me go. Up close, I could see how uncomfortable my parents looked, as if they weren't sure they had the right to be there. My mom spoke first, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Grace, we heard you were getting married." I folded my arms instinctively. "I didn't invite you." My dad looked down for a moment before meeting my eyes. "We know." There was a long silence that felt heavier than the years between us. Finally, my mom took a shaky breath and said something I never expected to hear. "Emily told us the truth." My chest tightened. Apparently, a few months earlier, Emily's relationship with Tyler had collapsed in a dramatic argument, and during it, he admitted everything, every lie, every manipulation, every way he had twisted the story years ago to protect himself. My sister had finally realized what I had tried to tell her all those years before. My parents had been stunned. According to my dad, Emily spent weeks crying and insisting they find a way to reach me. But by then, I had moved cities, changed numbers, built a life that no longer revolved around their approval. Standing there in the chapel, I listened quietly as they apologized, their voices heavy with regret. For the first time in my life, they weren't defending Emily. They weren't dismissing me. They were simply asking for forgiveness. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked around the room, the flowers being arranged along the aisle, the warm sunlight spilling through the stained glass windows, the friends who had become my real family over the years. My life had grown strong without them. Eventually, I said something that surprised even me. "You can stay, but today isn't about the past." My mom's eyes filled with tears, and my dad nodded silently. The next day, when I walked down the aisle toward Daniel, I caught a glimpse of them sitting quietly among the guests. They weren't in the front row, and they didn't try to take attention away from the moment. They simply watched. After the ceremony, my dad hugged me for the first time in nearly a decade, his voice rough as he whispered, "We're proud of you," and strangely, I believed him. Life doesn't always give us perfect endings, but sometimes it gives us something just as powerful: truth, closure, and the chance to move forward. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, because stories like this remind us how complicated family can be and how strong people can become when they build their own path. And I genuinely love to know where you're watching from, so leave your country or city in the comments below. As for me, that wedding day wasn't just the start of a marriage. It was the moment I finally realized something important. The people who once told me I didn't belong had finally learned the truth. And by then, I had already built a life where I truly did.